Ladies and gentlemen, good day, and welcome to the South Indian Bank Limited conference call, Q3 FY21, hosted by Antique Stock Broking Limited. As a reminder, all participant lines will be in the listen-only mode, and there will be an opportunity for you to ask questions after the presentation concludes. Should you need assistance during the conference call, please signal an operator by pressing star then 0 on your touchtone phone. Please note that this conference is being recorded. I now hand the conference over to Mr. Sohail Halai from Antique Stock Broking. Thank you, and over to you, sir.
Thank you, Nirav. On behalf of Antique Stock Broking, I welcome you all to 3Q FY21 earnings conference call of South Indian Bank. Today we have with us Mr. Murali Ramakrishnan, MD and CEO, Mr. Thomas Joseph, EVP Operations, and Ms. Chitra, CFO, along with other senior members from the management team. Without further delay, I now hand over the call to Murali sir for his opening remarks.
Thank you. A very good morning to all of you, and thank you for joining us for the South Indian Bank Q3 FY21 earnings conference call. We hope that you and your family are safe and healthy. We are joined by my colleagues Mr. Thomas Joseph, EVP Operations, and Mrs. Chitra, CFO. Let me take you through the key highlights of the operational and financial performance for this quarter. The bank's operating performance continued to improve in Q3 FY21. The company reported a net loss of 92 crores for Q3 FY21, mainly due to cumulative interest reversal of Rs 73 crores on pro forma NPA and conservatively providing 100% on newly identified fraud cases with an additional provision of Rs 67 crores during the quarter. As guided in my previous call, we'll be selectively growing non-corporate book with focus on agri, gold, and MSME loans. At the same time, calibrate corporate book as we go along. As on December 31, 2020, the total business for the bank stands at 1,45,139 crores. Advances declined to 63,353 crores, mainly due to degrowth in corporate loan portfolio and offset in part by 20% year-on-year growth in total gold loans of Rs 8,823 crores, in tune with our strategy. The share of corporate loans declined from 30% as on December 19 to 24% as of December 20. Core deposits rose by 8% to 76,573 crores. CASA deposits increased by 9% to 23,332 crores. CASA ratio improved to 27.9% of the total deposits. Bulk and certificate of deposits declined by 51% in line with our strategy. NRI deposits, which has been growing strongly, rose by 12% to 25,859 crores and contributes about 31% of the total deposits. Low-cost NRI deposits grew by 18% to 7,903 crores. Our investment was 22,967 crores, of which HTM category contributed rupees 18,719 crores, while AFS contributed rupees 4,172 crores. Gross NPA ratio was 4.9% as of December 20. Net NPA ratio improved by 47 basis points to 2.12 as on December 20. In Q2 2021, we had given guidance of rupees 1,400 crores slippages and 1,200 crores slippages of restructuring for Q3 and Q4 of FY 2021. Following the guidance, accounts not classified as NPA during the quarter due to the order of Supreme Court was rupees 1,379 crores and one-time restructuring stood at rupees 44 crores. However, the bank has provided rupees 154 crores during the quarter, in addition to rupees 22 crores provided in last quarter towards pro forma NPA of rupees 130 crores. The bank also continues to hold COVID-19 related provisions of aggregating to rupees 100.5 crores against standard assets. The above provision of rupees 275 crores towards standard asset is not considered in PCR calculations. Net interest income for the quarter was rupees 596 crores. Net interest margin was 2.64% for quarter ended December 20 as against 2.72% in December 19. Cumulative NIM for 9 months ended was 2.74% as against 2.65% for December 19. Other income for the quarter increased by 23% year-on-year to rupees 270 crores. Our treasury income increased by 160% to 109 crores, while core fee income decreased by 9% to 162 crores. Operating profit for the quarter was 377 crores against rupees 383 crores in Q3 FY20. The cost income ratio for 9 months ended December 2020 was 54.8%. Overall provisions increased by 91% to 499 crores in Q3 FY21. These provisions include loan loss provision of 272 crores and standard asset provisions of 155 crores. Including write-offs, the provision coverage ratio continued to improve and stood at 72% at December 2020 as against 65.2% at September 2020. Excluding write-off, PCR stands at 58% compared to 48% at September 2020 and 32% at December 2019. Our overall capital adequacy improved to 14.5%, while the core CRAR is at 11.6%. The bank has a wide geographical presence with 877 branches, 51 extension counters, and over 1,443 ATMs. To summarize, the bank will continue the strategy of building low-cost CASA book, focus on increasing gold lending, improve NR.
Ladies and gentlemen, please stay connected. The line for the management has dropped. Participants, please stay connected while we rejoin the management back to the call. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. We have the line for the management connected back to the call. So you may go ahead and continue with your opening remarks.
Yeah. Our overall capital adequacy improved to 14.5%, while the core CRAR is at 11.6%. The bank has a wide geographical presence with 877 branches, 51 extension counters, and over 1,443 ATMs. To summarize, the bank will continue the strategy of building low-cost CASA book, focus on increased gold lending, improve NRA share of deposits, improving cost efficiencies, and improve asset quality by focusing on building granular advances book through personal, agri, and business segments. With this, we open the floor for questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will now begin the question and answer session. Anyone who wishes to ask a question, you may press star and 1 on your touchtone telephone. If you wish to remove yourself from the question queue, you may press star and 2. Participants are requested to use handsets while asking a question. Ladies and gentlemen, we will wait for a moment while the question queue assembles. Anyone who wishes to ask a question, you may press star and 1. First question is from the line of Lalit Deo from Equirus. Please go ahead.
Yeah, good morning, sir, and thank you for providing me the opportunity. So I had two questions on the asset quality. Sir, so in the presentation, it is mentioned that our overall slippage guidance for FY21 is around 1,600 crores, while the pro forma NPA as of 3Q FY21 is 1,500 crores. So is it fair to assume that the slippages in the fourth quarter will be limited to this, or will there be any additional slippages?
Yeah. So the pro forma NPA for this quarter is 1,508 crores. This includes 535 crores towards two specific accounts. One of which is where there is a resolution which has already happened, where we are expecting money to come back by end of January, possibly. And the other one is likely to get upgraded from NPA into restructured. From these two accounts, we are expecting a recovery of, a drop of close to 400 crores. So net, this 1,508 to 507 crores is actually 1,107 crores. This also includes 132 crores of pro forma NPA, which we had declared in Q2. So if you actually look at the actual increase, but for these two which got slipped into January, it's less than 1,000 crores for this quarter. And we are expecting NPA for the next quarter to be close to about 550 crores. Estimate is about 550 crores. So together we expect that the overall number will probably be increasing by maybe 100 crores or so in NPA. As far as restructuring is concerned, between Q3 and Q4, we expect restructuring to be less than 1,000 crores as against 1,200 crores, which I presented in Q2 results.
Sure, sir. And sir, on the restructuring assets, like you mentioned that we are planning to do a restructuring of around less than 1,000 crores. So as of 3Q, we have done only 44 crores. So the remaining restructured assets, will this be mostly corporate loans, or is it a combination of corporate, SME, and retail loans?
Yeah, as I said, out of one of the two big accounts where we are expecting upgrade to happen from NPA into restructuring is obviously a corporate account. It's going to be the major share is from corporate, and then from next segment is from business loan, and third one is from personal segment.
Sure, sir. So can you give us like the major sectors in the corporate, like which are the sectors from where you are seeing most restructuring?
Actually, it's actually running across various sectors. So, frankly, with the COVID situation, as you know, it's very few segments which have actually revived. So, it's actually a mix of various segments. So, I wouldn't particularly say that a specific segment is going to be contributing. It is actually across different segments.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next question is from the line of Rinesh Harishbhai Bua from ICICI Securities. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi sir. Thanks for the opportunity. So sir, just I missed a couple of numbers. One was on the interest reversal side. What was the number you said, sir, on the interest reversal side?
73 crores.
73 crores. Okay.
Yeah.
And any numbers? I mean, what sort of margin impact we have seen because of interest reversal?
See, if you look at if you were to really compare the, I'll just give me a minute. Let me take out the paper. Yeah. If you look at
comparing the sequential margin trend.
Yeah, that's what I'm coming there. Yeah. See, if you look at our numbers for Q2, the total income for Q2 was 903 crores, which included net interest income of 663 crores and other income of 240 crores, which added up to 903 crores for Q2. For Q3, net interest income is 596 crores and other income of 270 crores, adding up to 867 crores. So in net interest income, if you see, it has dropped from 663 to 596, which is actually 67 crores drop. Sorry, not 67. So 37 plus 41 crores drop. So as against 73 crores of reversal, the net interest income drop is only 47 crores.
Got it. Okay. So basically, should we consider this as a one-off quarter in terms of margin, or what explains the maybe sharp drop in the yields? I mean, it is largely because of the interest reversal?
Yeah, as per the guidance given by me, for the fourth quarter, we are expecting another 550 crores of likely NPA, and there is a restructuring which I had indicated of 850 crores. So obviously there will be reversal. If you are estimating NPA, there will be an interest reversal which will happen for such accounts, and therefore to that extent there will be interest reversal. But we also believe that like the way we had worked this quarter, there will be definitely improvement in terms of our yield from the assets which we will be building. So with that, we believe that the impact may not be as much as the reversal which happens. It will be probably muted compared to that. So I would probably say that Q4, always I have looked at Q3, Q4 together as a block, because these are the 2 quarters just after the lockdown. So hopefully by April, when the economy also starts reviving, we will be expecting asset growth to really kick off from there. This is in line with the strategy also which I had laid down. So as we build our, as per our strategy, as we build our assets book, we believe that the traction in NI will start happening. But certainly for Q4, you will see impact of interest reversal to the extent our NPA which we are envisaging for Q4.
Got it, sir. And sir, the next question was on this fraud account provisioning, which is 70 crore and which is fully provided also. So sir, if I recall, I mean, so once in a year we have such sort of provisioning on the fraud account. I mean, every year we have around 150 sort of fraud accounts being identified and provided for. So sir, since you have joined, what is the risk management practices we have changed to sort of get away with this, fraud account, what is happening currently, which is actually hitting up our P&L significantly over last 2 to 3 years?
Excellent question. So I would put it this way. See, fraud account which we had actually provided for this quarter, we had a choice of providing it over next 4 quarters. As you know, once we declare an account as fraud, we have a choice of providing it over 4 quarters. But we decided to take the full hit in this quarter itself for 2 of those accounts. That only has led to this amount which I had mentioned in my opening remarks. With respect to the changes which I am planning to do or which I am already started doing to really reduce the impact of frauds going forward. See, frauds broadly you can say that there are of 2 kinds. One is credit frauds happening due to things happening in the account once the account start deteriorating. There are things which typically a counterparty does, which probably would fall into the definition of fraud as per Reserve Bank guidelines. That makes the consortium of banks to declare an account as RFA, and then once an investigation happens, they then call it as fraud. So that is one thing which happens due to credit-related frauds which keep happening. The second one is, of course, fraud related to the internal as well as customer frauds, which are more of retail, I would say corporate in nature. So with respect to the first one, where we are talking about deterioration happening in the counterparty and therefore counterparty doing things which are not ethically right, for that only way to have a good control over that is through a efficient asset monitoring. So therefore we need to have a quality asset monitoring, and I have definite plans of doing that, and we have already started strengthening them. This is basically to have an ox eye on how each account will be behaving and having a closer look at how the account is behaving and whether the cash flows are indeed happening, whether the debtors are really moving in the right direction. Because this is where typically I have seen in my experience promoters committing unethical practices. They realize that some debtors not coming in, they can probably manage it for 1 or 2 quarters, and therefore they do things which are not ethical, which is not generally noticed. And over a period, it deteriorates into irreconcilable situation. So the only way to have a hawk's eye on that is to do a good, account monitoring. So that is one thing which we are strengthening. The second one is to ensure that the quality of underwriting, where you actually look for abnormalities or discrepancies in the documents getting submitted. So you having a good hold on what is getting misrepresented through cross checks, etc. That comes through improving the competency in terms of quality underwriting. So we are taking definite steps in improving the quality of underwriting. In fact, as I am talking to, we have just finished training our entire SME team on sourcing good quality proposals and underwriting good quality proposals. Similarly, we have already halfway through in terms of developing credit models prepared by consultants who are working closely with us in the retail as well as in SME area to ensure that the deals which actually pass through the muster of quality underwriting will only be approved and sanctioned and onboarded. So there, once you spread out the balance sheet and P&L etc. which you get, and you can easily figure out what is being misrepresented, because you can cross check that through various other numbers which has to correlate with each other. So it's a question of improving technology to have a better understanding of the to increase the competence of the team which is looking at it, and third, sensitizing the entire team which is involved both in sourcing and underwriting to look out for this. I think if once the sensitization happens and people actually start applying this, my endeavor is that it will definitely help in identifying frauds much before they worsen, and also we can probably eliminate them, not onboarding them in the first place. So these are some of the short to medium term measures which I am taking. And other big thing which I am planning to do is also that we are creating a separate operations division which is distinct from sales, distinct from credit, distinct from risk, where operations will not obviously carry any of the sales targets. Their work will be focusing only on what are the pre-disbursement conditions and whether all the terms and conditions have been met with before money gets disbursed. So all that checks which we are expected to do before we lend money or before we start looking at the repayments of the customer, that will be done by an exclusive team which doesn't carry any of these deliverables. So like the way it is done in some of the larger banks and best run banks, we are creating that division so that will actually act as a watchdog from not letting in anything which is not in the right way of things. So these are some of the measures which I'm taking.
Right. So sir, this redefined business operations, I mean, when it will be get fully implemented, and when we'll see the synergies coming through from these initiatives, sir? From next year onwards?
We have already appointed a head of operations who is likely to join in the next couple of months, probably within a month or so. And we already have obviously the bank has been running for many years, so there is an operations activities and processes which are there. So it's just a fine-tuning them to create a separate vertical under him. So once he joins, with the existing which is already involved in this operations, we'll be clearly creating a retail asset operation, retail liability operation, which will ensure that, as far as liability is concerned, all the KYC checks are done properly before you onboard an account. As far as asset is concerned, all the pre-disbursement checks will be done, and there will be clearly manual created, and sensitization will happen to the business teams. All that will start happening simultaneously. So good progress is happening there, and I'm fairly sure that this is in tune with what I spelled out as my strategy. So from April onwards, we will start seeing impact of those changes in the way we are doing business.
Got it, sir. So thanks a lot for such a detailed explanation. That's it from my side. If I have any other question, I will come back in the queue, sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next question is from the line of Deepak Poddar from Sapphire Capital. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, sir, for the opportunity. Now, sir, just wanted to have some comments from your side on the credit cost in the next quarter and the next year. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, so credit cost, as I said, we are expecting slippages of about, I estimate the slippage about 550 crores for Q4. So in all we are talking about credit cost to be around 2.2% for the full year. That's what we are looking at. And
of FY21.
Okay, that's right.
2.2%. Okay. And what about the next year?
Next year, there is a whole lot of changes which we are doing. As you know, I have laid down a strategy of building retail book, and so the composition of the book is going to change dramatically in the next year. So therefore, I would not hazard a guess now, but we would definitely the existing book of corporate business segment and whatever little we have done in the retail, we will have to manage them. And I feel that the slippage which has been at about 2% plus kind of thing, I would probably expect from the existing book something similar to that. But then whatever new book which we are going to add, we would want to add a quality book so that overall the impact is less. I would not hazard a guess now because the composition of the book is definitely going to change.
Okay, that's it from my side. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next question is from the line of Utsav from B&K Securities. Please go ahead.
Hello.
Go ahead, sir. You're audible.
Yeah, sorry, this is Jay here. So, sir, first question, you talked about the new hire as in head of operation. Any other hire that you can specify that you have hired and probably they are joining?
Yeah, all the key lines which I am talking about, whether it's unsecured loan, home loan, then analytics head, collections head, all these have been, we have given offers, and credit head, new credit head for the entire bank. So all this we have already recruited and given offers, so they are expected to join in the days and weeks to come.
Sure.
Operations day.
Okay. All right, good. And now, sir, question on asset quality. So if I look at the slide 2019, which says the collection efficiency at 89%. Just to understand this correctly, sir, if you can provide if this is broadly similar across SME, commercial, corporate, or is there any variation in that 89%? Roughly, broadly, it will also help.
It is broadly. See, if you look at only one trend which I just want to spell out is that if you recall in the last Q2 call, I mentioned about retail being particularly better than the business and other segments. So, and also one trend which we noticed is that whenever it's falling due in a month, for that month the recovery is on an average about 80 to 85%. But then 1 month from then and 2 months from then, we are seeing that the recovery percentage is as high as 95% plus for many of the products. So, but if you really ask me how much is the percentage in each of the segments, I mean, just to give some indication, housing is around 90% plus, 93% is housing, mortgage is 91%, vehicle is about 94%, corporate is at about 91%, business is about 88%. So these are some of the, and others are at about 79%. So overall, it's about 18.5%, 89.5% is what we are seeing. This used to be 92% for last year Q2. So it's the drop of about 1.5% or so.
Right, sir. So in the second follow-up, sir, is so the collection efficiency 89%. So in a way, as of December, the total overdue book, right, SMA 012, is around 10.5, 11%, right?
You see, what actually happens is, yes, as it's a very dynamic book, which I think it's important to understand what we are doing to manage the SMA 1 and 2 book. Your question is a valid question. So let me spell out exactly what we are doing to control this book. See, as I am talking to you, every week we take stock of what is happening in SMA 0, SMA 1, SMA 2 book of my entire portfolio, both in the corporate and retail side. So the way SMA 1 and SMA 2 will get built up is through the slippages from SMA 0, and any recovery happening in SMA 2 will get upgraded to SMA 1. Similarly, if more recovery happens, then it will fall into SMA 0, and if any deterioration happens, it will slip into NPA. So what we are clearly concerned about is how much of slippages will happen from SMA 2 to NPA book, that we have looked at all the individual segments, and we are estimating that it's likely to be about 550 crores for Q4. And historically, what we have seen in restructured book is, because that's another area where today restructured book could be in SMA 1, SMA 2, it could be any of those. And therefore, another thing which we should be concerned about is how much of restructured book will not actually behave the way we are restructuring, how much of that will slip into NPA. So this is another area which can impact your overall NPA percentage. So that what we have seen is historically it's been at about, earlier days I'm saying it was slightly at about higher level, about 30-40%. But last 2-3 years we are seeing it to be close to 25 to 30% range. This time, after I joined, the way I'm going about restructuring is to really look at each of the cases with the cash flows, with the business model. So we are indeed restructuring only those cases which we firmly believe will behave. But having said that, obviously, environment is something which you can't have control on. Therefore, we are expecting slippages to anywhere between 25 to 30% to happen, even from the restructured book. So overall, the estimate which we are giving for Q4 is 550 crores towards NPA and about 850 crores of restructuring is likely to happen. Actually, we have not done too much of restructuring as of Q3 end. So restructuring book which I had estimated 1,200 crores by my end of Q2 call, I am expecting a bulk of that, about 850 crores, to be done by Q4.
Right. So I think the way to understand is 11% overdue book, 550, let us say, which is 1% of the total loan book, may slip, and 900, which is, let us say, additional 1.5%, may get restructured. The rest will not change bucket, right? That is the understanding, that they may remain overdue, but probably will not slip.
Yeah, correct. Yes.
Okay. So actually, yeah. So that is that. And just a clarification, sir. So the way to understand March 21 number of 1,600 crore is the gross number, right? I mean, as you have said, that 500 crores 400 crores recovery, this is net of that number in a way.
Yeah, for the full year of Q3, Q4 put together. You are talking about the NPA guidance which I had given from the moratorium book, right?
Right.
Yeah. So that takes care of that 400 crores, not 400 crores of recovery. It's about 285 crores of recovery and 115 crores of upgrade from NPA into restructure.
Okay, sir. And just last two things, sir. If you can specify the sector of these two restructuring, probable restructuring and probable resolution, and the fraud account.
You are wanting to, sorry, I didn't understand your question. You want to know the names of the accounts?
Names means that sector will help.
Sector, okay. The one which we are expecting resolution to happen by January is a East-based company, and it's in cement business. And the one which is getting upgraded from this thing is a retail.
Right. Okay. And the fraud account is a jewelry account?
No. Fraud account is the large infra.
Okay. Right, sir. And the last thing, sir, restructuring, is there any, what is the interest accounting? I mean, do we keep accruing interest on restructuring, or is there any, I mean, we don't accrue the interest on restructuring. So that was the last thing.
The way restructuring will be done is, whichever is the interest overdue, we will do it as FITL, and then we expect them to pay as per the revised repayment structure. And it will then follow the regular credit. I mean, if it doesn't get paid, then it will get flipped into buckets, and then it will become NPA if it crosses 90 days.
Right. So, okay. So, in a way, it will keep accruing, but if they don't pay, you will create an FITL, so provisioning is adjusted.
No, yeah. Once we restructure, we need to provide immediately as per 10% as per the COVID provisioning norm. So that will happen. Then we'll keep monitoring the account as per the revised cash flows, which we envisage, the revised repayment structure, and then it will follow the regular bucket movement. SMA 0, SMA 1 and 2, etc. And we'll keep providing as per the bucket movement.
Right. Great, sir. Thank you and all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next question is from the line of Sri Shankar from InCred. Please go ahead.
Good morning, Mr. Murali Ramakrishnan. I've got a couple of questions. The first question is, thanks for the guidance for March 21. But at the same time, can we know, I don't know whether you answered this question earlier, what is our SMA 0 plus 1 plus 2 total outstanding today as of December? And I'm sure that SMA 2 will have, because of the current guidelines, it may have more than 90 days also like in SMA 2. So what is the total, and can you give a breakup if you?
No, we can broadly say that, see, as I said in my earlier reply, SMA 1 and 2, SMA 0, 1 and 2 and NPA is looked at as a dynamic book which we keep reviewing every week. So, if I give a number also, it's a number as of, let's say, 31st December, for which I've already told how much is the NPA, how much is the likely restructuring, and what is the provision NPA which we are carrying, and also the provision which we have made towards those from my NPAs. So it's a dynamic number. Therefore, I would probably say that COVID restructuring, what we have done is only 44 crores as of Q3 end, which we will probably be doing about 850 crores in Q4. And pro forma NPA as of Q3 end is about 1,507 crores, which includes that 535 crores of two accounts where we are expecting recovery / upgrade of 400 crores. So, and an additional provisioning of about 550 crores. So, if I were to really say from SMA 1 and 2 book, what will happen to those book in terms of actually having an impact in provisioning is something which I am giving guidance for. I mean, I think that should be good enough to sort of understand where we are, right?
Okay. And see, so you have picked a bullet this quarter by actually taking a large amount of provisioning, thereby probably reporting a loss. Do you think that this particular action, to me, it's only a bouquet which should have happened long back? Do you think
you're talking about
your liability?
Fraud account where you have taken a full hit, you're asking whether it should have been done long back. Is that your question?
No. The entire provisioning, which has been, our PCR has been extremely low when compared to the peers in the market. So that was one issue which has got addressed to a great extent. But my question is, do you think that this is going to have an impact on your liability customers? Because a loss from a bank is probably not something that customers probably wouldn't have taken care. So have you addressed it with your large liability customers? And do you think that our deposit growth has been 8% or so? So now that's not going to be an issue going forward?
No, see, look at it this way. This COVID, I mean, if you were to really look at, probably my answer will be a little longer, so you need to have patience for hearing me out. See, what we have experienced from April of this year, from March of this year, after the, not this year, I mean, the year which ended, it's an unprecedented situation where the entire banking system was going through a lockdown situation where customers were asked not to make any payment during that period. And depending on each bank's announcement, X number of customers opted for moratorium, and we also had we offered it to everybody, and about 50%, 57% of our customers chose to avail moratorium. So, and this got lifted in August 10, and therefore, then this is the first quarter after the moratorium got lifted, because in the Q2 quarter we had only 1 month of recovery happening. So that's the reason why we actually gave upfront what we estimate from our assessment of the book which we are carrying. We gave an estimate of how much it's likely to deteriorate over the next 2 quarters and also over the subsequent quarters. I had mentioned clearly that 10%, which is about 1700 crores, we said that 1400 of that will likely to become NPA in Q3, Q4 itself, and then we expect another 1200 to get restructured. So this announcement has been made very clear, and we have been transparent in telling that. And after that, we have seen our deposit growth. So, and our deposit growth is not something which has happened, which is happening now. I think we have a terrific franchise of retail deposit base for decades, and the customers of this bank has been extremely loyal to this bank, and we are very thankful to them, and we are very fortunate to have a very stable franchise of retail deposits. And what we have done over there is also to reduce the impact of bulk deposits suddenly moving out and creating a fluctuation in our deposit base. We have consciously degrown our large deposit book, and despite degrowing happening there, overall our deposit growth is still continuing to show. This is on one side. The second side is on the CASA, where you can very clearly see that our savings account deposit is clearly going up, and that has led to overall CASA growth. So I would tend to think that by making it very transparent and clear, I think the credibility of the institution definitely gets built as we keep coming out more and more in terms of what we actually are doing and what we are actually doing to improve our franchise and to improve our brand positioning. This will only help more and more customers to actually start putting more and more deposits, is my reading of the situation. So I would tend to think that the more we are closer to what we are announcing, in the sense that based on our estimates, the more we stick to that, I think we will be definitely building a lot more trust with our stakeholders, and deposit holders are indeed one of our strong pillars of this bank. So we are expecting things can only improve going forward.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next question is from the line of Rohan Mundra from Equirus. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi sir. Thanks for the opportunity. So I just wanted to get a sense on the pro forma NPAs that we are having. What is the provisioning that we have created against those?
15%. Like in NPA, which we carry 15% for year one, we have provided 15% on that, and we have also done the interest reversal for the entire pro forma NPA cases.
And this 15% is part of 15% provision is part of the 225 crores COVID provision that we are carrying, or is it part of the provision?
No. It won't come under the PCR. This is part of the 225 which you talked about.
225.
We were calling that COVID provisioning. No, in Q1, Q2 we were talking about COVID provisioning across the banking. So it continues to be grouped under that, because still we can't call them as NPA. Therefore, we can't put it under provision of NPA. So it's a pro forma NPA provisioning which is added to sort of COVID provisioning.
Sure, sir. And in terms of like incrementally after say the current financial year, when we enter to next year and going ahead, as a provisioning policy on incremental slippages, would we be broadly following what the RBI is doing, or like some banks are doing, where they are looking at the LGDs from those slippages and then making adequate provisions upfront? So will we like to change that policy, or as of now we are thinking of continuing with the RBI provisioning guidelines in FY22 onwards?
Yes, we will definitely be following regulatory guideline on them. And in our estimate, if we firmly believe that recovery from a particular account is going to be worsened, we will go ahead and provide more. Like what I had indicated earlier, in the fraud account also, we had a choice of providing it over 4 quarters. So we did not go by regulatory requirement. We wanted to provide fully so that we are taking care of that. I mean, one of the reasons which also prompts us to be very prudent on that is to improve our PCR, because it's one of the areas where the bank traditionally has been having issues. So we wanted to address that head on.
Sure, sir. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next question is from the line of Sharvari Joshi from Trivikram Consultants. Please go ahead.
Good morning, sir. Thanks so much for taking my question. So my question is regarding the loan book. So this quarter there's been a decline, as you mentioned in your commentary, that mainly due to the corporate book decline. So I just wanted to get a sense of how to look at the loan book going forward for say FY21 and 22, and what segments do you think would be the drivers for growth for the future?
Yeah. This has been spelled out in detail in my strategy document, which is there in our site also. So we, as a stated strategy, we are going to be growing our retail, MSME, SME and agri book, and we will have a calibrated growth of our corporate book. So, where we have given in each of these product lines how much delta we are growing in terms of book has been clearly worked out, and we have stated that in our strategy document. So I suggest that you have a look at that, and I'm sure if you still have any questions on that, I'll be happy to take. Right now I'm not carrying that strategy document with me, but I can broadly tell you that we are looking at for the year 1, which I am saying as starting with April 21 to March 22, and then if you compare that with the subsequent years, the growth which we are envisaging in the asset is going to be gradual. We are not expecting post-COVID to be having a huge revival. Therefore, we are looking at a moderate growth in all our chosen area of growth for the year 1, and then it will increase further to year 2, and then it will probably be more in year 3. This is also in tune with what I believe is the assimilation of the changed practices amongst the employee base of our organization. So as they get used to the new way of doing things, I am sure the traction on growth of these products will also happen more easily than in the year 1. So that's how we are looking at, by way of directionally, that's what we are looking at for the next 3 years. So we have clearly laid down our the list of products to be launched with 3 phases. First phase from April 1, and second phase starting with October, and third phase from April 1 of 2022. And clearly these timelines also we will be choosing carefully depending on how well the changes are assimilated by the employees of the organization. So with these new products and with the revised change processes and the credit models, etc., which I talked about in my earlier reply, we believe that we will be getting traction as we go along in growth of each of these product lines.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, you may press star and 1 to ask a question. The next question is from the line of Vaibhav Barjatia from HNI Investments. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, sir. Thanks for providing the opportunity. So just 2 questions from my side. First is that historically we have seen your bank raising equity capital at really, I mean, discount to book as well and discount to the share prices as well, and that is a big hurdle in terms of long-term creation of wealth for the existing shareholders. So just wanted to understand your views on this policy, because this kind of creates a catch-22 situation for the existing shareholders, basically to put in more money or to dilute themselves at a substantially lower prices. So just wanted to hear your views going forward. under your management, what would be the policy? Secondly, on the credit side, just wanted to understand the changes that you're doing in your credit assessment team, wherever capability to judge whether quality of the accounts can be substantially improved, because this is the key here. From a longer term perspective, what matters is the quality of the lending, and just wanted to understand what changes you have done to improve that.
Yeah, both are good questions. The first one is this I have articulated a few times in the past also. So we are quite conscious of the fact that when we raise capital, naturally there is this apprehension about a dilution of existing shareholders' interest. Therefore, we are quite conscious of that. At the same time, we also need to look at the institution requirements and look at the other stakeholders' requirement. Therefore, we'll be weighing between these two, and then we will choose to raise certain quantum, which would definitely help the institution to make the balance sheet stronger. Therefore, in the first tranche of whatever amount we are planning to raise, we are quite consciously choosing not a too huge an amount, but a reasonably safer amount to ensure that the institution balance sheet is strengthened. And as we see traction happening in our strategy in the coming year, starting with, let's say, April 1, 2021, and if we believe that we are going in the right traction, that's when we'll probably raise a balanced portion of the tranche one which we are talking about. So I'm quite conscious, we are quite conscious about this dilution aspect which you talked about, and therefore it is to take care of the institution's strength that we are doing this. And I believe that as existing shareholders, I'm sure all of them would be interested in taking the institution to the higher level of performance, which will happen with beefing up of capital and with traction happening in the strategies which you have spelled out very clearly. So therefore it is in no way jeopardizing the interest of the existing stakeholders who have waited this long for making returns in investing these two stocks. I think it's a question of watching it carefully and tracking the traction of this institution in the way I'm envisaging the transformation to happen. And I believe that if we do the things as envisaged, and if we stick to what we believe are the right things to do for building the institution's strength, I'm sure there is much to gain for existing shareholders to stay invested. I mean, that's the limited thing which I would say as far as the capital question is concerned. With respect to the second question, I think it's a very important question, and this is something which is very fundamental to the strategy which I am spelling out. As you are right, because this institution has actually suffered from provisioning hit due to lumpy corporate exposures which you had in the past, and also due to some of those accounts declared as fraud because of various things which I spelled out in my earlier reply. This has actually impacted the provisioning of the institution. So though at operating profit level, the institution has been generating decent amount of operating income, but always the bottom line suffered due to provisioning impact. So in order to improve that, the way turnarounds have happened, where I have had the fortune of doing 2-3 such turnarounds in my earlier stint in other organizations, there are two things should be taken care of. One is how do you manage the existing book, how do you churn the existing book into high quality book, for which you need a stronger credit and stronger sourcing skill. So we are going to be focusing on improving the sourcing skill of our employees, and we are going to be strengthening the way we credit underwrite, which is what I am planning to do both in the areas of retail, SME, MSME, through building credit models with experts' advice, where our business acumen will be put in to ensure that we have the model which can reasonably predict what is the likely default rate for the book which you are creating. And we will definitely closely monitor the traction happening in each of these through vintage curves, etc., which we will be drawing through our analytics division to track how well the book is growing. One thing is to say that wait for the delinquency to happen before you think. The other one is to take proactive action. Once we see the trend line of vintage curve, we can start taking action much before it actually reflects in delinquency going up. So by taking proactive action and with the beefing up of credit skills through models as well as training our employees and with analytics capability, I believe that we are doing all the right things to bring traction in the quality of books we'll be creating. But it is a journey. because you can't just make an existing book suddenly become clean. It has to have churning, which will happen as we keep building more and more retail book and more MSME book, where the granulation of deals will happen, and degrowing corporate in a selective way, so that lumpiness and the concentration risk doesn't affect your portfolio. So this is a journey which we will be undertaking, and I believe that with the clear milestones laid down for year 1, year 2, year 3, in the way we have put it in our strategy document, and if we get the acts right, I am sure we will be looking at a clean book going forward in the periods which you envisaged.
Right. Sir, so on the corporate, obviously focus is retail and MSME, but on the corporate side, you are not thinking to kind of start again afresh with good credit assessment capability and start corporate lending. That's not on your radar at all?
No, it is definitely in my radar. So there are two things which we will be doing in the corporate side. One is the portfolio which we are carrying today. There are obviously set of corporate book where we have got good experience, where the repayments have been very good, and we have seen even the down cycles they have done very well. So we will continue to nurture those accounts, and we will obviously be conscious of the total exposure which will take on such group, but we will definitely be staying with them, and we will be definitely supporting them through incremental lending which will happen. As far as the other segment, which where the approach, as far as the approach to the other corporate cases will be, we will be pre-selecting the set of corporates who we want to have a relationship with, in the sense that we will use the externally available rating mechanism as well as the databases which are available today in the market, like Scope 42 or those kind of packages which are available. We will be able to pre-select the set of corporate customers who we want to target, and this will be approached through the 20 regions which we have across the country, and we will have a separate vertical created for this, headed by one of the talented employees within the bank, to drive this business. The way retail business will be run with the experts who understand their specific retail businesses, we are going to have national heads for driving gold business, driving SME, MSME business, and driving corporate business. So this set of corporate customers who we are pre-selecting will definitely be approached by this team which is spread across the country to take exposure. But having said that, we will be conscious of how much exposure do we want to take in each of them. We will be conscious about the industry risk which you are carrying. So all this will be clearly supplemented with the capabilities built in the risk team, so that the book which we are creating will be behaving the way we are envisaging. So clearly we are not neglecting that. In fact, in my strategy document also, you can see there is a growth which we are putting across even in corporate book. But that will be with a good corporate book replacing the deteriorating corporate.
Okay, sir, that's it from my side. Thanks for the elaborate answer.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. The next question is from the line of Saket Kapoor from Kapoor and Company. Please go ahead.
Yes, sir. Dhanyavad, sir, for the opportunity. Sir, firstly about this provisioning part, sir. As per the percentage you mentioned about 74%, are we now having the adequate provision ratio, or what is our target going forward depending upon the nature of the book?
Yeah, see, for this to be spelled out, let me say two specific things. One is the provision coverage ratio doesn't take into account the provisioning which you have made towards pro forma NPA. And pro forma NPA, as you know, we have provided 15% of the pro forma NPA, which is about 1,507 crores for this quarter, which we are expecting actually to be 1,107 due to 400 crores of likely recovery and upgrade, with another 550 crores getting added in Q4. Hopefully by then, if Supreme Court comes with a ruling saying that it can be declared as NPA, then all this provisioning will go towards actual NPA provisioning. But since we are providing only 15% cautiously towards COVID provisioning towards this pro forma NPA, clearly this 15% is lower than the provision coverage ratio which you are talking about of 72%. So there will be a dip in the PCR. If Q4 government, Supreme Court says that we can declare this as NPA, then obviously you will see a dip in the PCR. But we are wanting to ensure that this will not dip below 60% by Q4. Even if the Supreme Court order comes, says that we need to declare all this as NPA, we would want to ensure that PCR doesn't fall below 60%.
Sir, you spoke about one cement player in the eastern region, the account turning SAR and getting restructured the next month. What is the quantum of provision we have made for that account?
Now both accounts are NPA today, which is about 535 crores. 15% of that is made as provision.
Both means that there are two players in the east, the cement part.
I talked about two accounts. One is a cement player, the other one is a retail. No, I talked about two corporates.
The cement is about
two corporates put together. The total exposure is 535 crores, in which we are expecting 400 crores reversal to happen by recovering 285 crores by way of cash and 115 crores by way of upgrade from NPA into restructuring.
Okay, sir.
Today they are NPA. One of them will get upgraded to restructuring.
Yes. Sir, you have articulated the vision document for 2024 in your earlier conversation with investors and analysts.
Right.
And said today just the predecessor speaker, you spoke about keeping the faith for investor community. So sir, how confident do you feel, sir, since you have already mentioned that you could be called as a specialist in turning around cases. If you could give example how you have in past turned around the assignment, so that would be giving us more confidence that in this case also there can be light at the end of the tunnel. Just to have an understanding that if we take the stock price performance, the result performance in all parameters, South Indian Bank is at the bottom of the pyramid, and it is only whenever the results are being declared, it is adding to our worries. You might be doing the prudent things right now so that the path can be cleared, but as of now it is the period of pain for us, and on top of that you are looking for capital raising. Sir, if you could give some color, sir, in soothing our nerves that you will be walking the talk, sir, so that would suffice our anxiety, sir.
You will have to see me walk to really estimate whether I am walking the talk. So I can only say that you need to have patience to stay with whatever I am articulating. I think I am articulating right from beginning in a way which I feel what is the path I am taking and what I'm not giving any 10,000 feet view. I'm actually giving you the ground view of how I am planning to do all these things. So I hope that should give you sufficient understanding that this is not something which I am just talking from thin air. It's actually out of experience of actually having handled such things in the past. I mean, I would only urge you to refer to my profile, and I work for organizations which are in a very reputed organizations where obviously you have to deliver to reach the levels which I had done. Therefore, I would only want you to make your own judgment about it, because there's no point in me trying to convince you saying that I am good. I mean, you need to really convince yourself. Because at the end of the day, that is the one which is going to help you to soothe your nerves. Whatever I can do, I can only say, articulate, and I can be more transparent, and I can probably discuss the nitty-gritties, and any questions you have, probably I can try to answer to the best of my ability. After that, to really see whether it is going to reflect in action, you will have to sail through the whole. I mean, my only thing is, you have probably been staying with this institution for long. Stay for some more time and see what actually happens.
Right, sir. And on the capital raising part, sir, you would like to throw some light? Anything in the annual or planning?
This is something which I have articulated many times. I mean, we have plans to raise capital. We have got approval from the board, and we are looking at the quantum and timing depending on how the whole thing is panning out. Because see, as just in this few days of this quarter, we have seen 5-6 banks coming out with results, and I'm sure there are a few more in the pipeline. So it clearly depends. Any existing investors, etc., they will also be looking at how they would want to allocate capital to which kind of companies, etc. I'm sure those discussions will also be happening through the potential investors. We are doing our best to present the institution's view and how we are getting traction in each of those areas which I spelled out. So we are in touch with potential investors, and we will take the appropriate action when it is ripe for doing it. So.
Right, sir. Right. Thank you, sir. Thank you and all the best, sir. Dhanyavad.
Thank you very much. The next question is from the line of Anuj from 3M Investments. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for this opportunity. My question is on capital raise. Again, I think the timing and the quantum, I think you are the best judge to decide what is a good time and what. My question is really on the mode of capital raise. I think one of the previous speaker also asked on this. See, typically the South-based banks have a peculiar way of raising capital for long. My question to you is, are you willing to evaluate different modes and optimize the way you raise capital? And have you gone through the various things and you're willing to accommodate a different mode or the same old mode? Because it seems that that's a suboptimal mode. Just your thoughts on that. Thank you.
Can you please elaborate? I didn't understand. When you say suboptimal mode, what exactly do you mean?
Yeah, see, it seems that the right issue way of raising capital, which has been very typical of the old private sector banks, has been the preferred mode. And there could be various modes of raising capital, right? So my question is, are you really open to look at the other modes which could seem, which could seem to be more optimal way of raising capital? I think one of the previous speakers also had the question on the same part. So are we willing to explore other modes of raising capital other than right issue?
Yeah, 100%. Yes, of course. We are, that's why I talked about, other stakeholders also. So one is definitely our present investors who are critical stakeholders, but we also need to look at other stakeholders, and therefore we are pretty open in exploring various ways of raising, and we are guided by our merchant banker also on this issue. So we are, that's why I'm saying timing and quantum and even the mode, etc., we will take at the appropriate time. We are not married or tied to any particular way of raising, and I appreciate that it's nothing to do with what has been done by others, etc. We will do what is right for our institution, and we will take it at the right time, and we will not hesitate to take even untreated path if it's really deserving for this organization.
All right, that answers my question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, that will be the last question for today. I will now hand the conference over to Mr. Sohail Halai for closing comments.
Yeah, thank you, Murli sir, for the time and opportunity to host the call and giving a detailed insight. Sir, before we end the call, would you like to add any closing remarks?
No, I once again wish all of you all the very best, and this is a unprecedented situation in terms of what the economy is going through and what we are all going through in our own workspace and personal life. So I wish all of you take extreme care of yourself and all the very best. And I really enjoy conversing with all of you, and I wish to state that we will do our best in being as much transparent and as open to all of you, and I'll be more than happy to get into detailing of anything which you would want to hear from us. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. On behalf of Antique Stock Broking Limited, that concludes this conference. Thank you for joining us. You may now disconnect your lines. Thank you.